The Creative Psychotherapist is the official podcast of the Creative Clinicians Corner, a practice-building resource for creative psychotherapists. TCP Podcast is the cast for creative, expressive, and experiential-focused psychotherapists curious to learn how to design, build, and scale a thriving private practice. Your host, Raina Lombardi, interviews successful therapists about the tools and strategies they have used to develop creative-focused practices. They also talk about the products, services, and side hustles they have developed using their knowledge and creativity to enhance their therapy practices, make a greater impact in their communities, and diversify their income streams. Welcome. Now here's your host, Raina Lombardi.
Today I want to welcome Ella Dufrene. She is a visual artist, art therapist, and yoga instructor. She believes that art is our most primitive style of communication and expression, dating back to our earliest forms of art making in prehistoric cave paintings. Driven by the instinctual knowledge of the innate and powerful healing powers of art, she received her master's in art therapy and creativity development from Pratt Institute in 2015. Deeply connected to the restorative flow and wisdom fostered by Mother Earth, Ella began exploring eco-art therapy techniques and moving towards an ecological artistic context that emphasizes collaboration and interconnection. This led her to facilitate her first eco art and yoga retreat in 2016 in the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta, Colombia. Oh, wow. Very cool. Currently, Ella is based out of Miami, Florida, where she works in a private school for children with special needs and runs weekly art therapy workshops out of an art studio in Coconut Grove. She has experience working with people on the autism spectrum, children and adults with special needs and developmental delays, drug and alcohol addiction, hospice, homeless shelters, eating disorders, as well as adults and children in both individual and group settings. She recently joined Guitars Over Guns nonprofit organization with the intention to inspire and empower at-risk youth through the arts. She emphasizes a holistic approach to wellness and utilizes a playful person-first approach to therapy. All of those that know and work with Ella can feel her passion for the healing properties of nature, art, and movement. Ella approaches her day-to-day and work life with a zest for life, a youthful spirit, and a contagiously open mind. I love it. Thank you, Ella.
Thank you, Raina.
I'm excited to have you and talk today about the process that you've undergone to create these eco art therapy retreat programs. In the bio, there's only one mention, but I do know that you have had several successful retreats already, and you have plans for another retreat in Costa Rica this year, in 2020.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. So the retreat started in 2016, and since then I've run about 5 retreats. And yes, our retreat in 2020 will be taking place in Costa Rica, and we also have one in September, which will be in Denver, Colorado.
Nice.
Oh, I'm sorry, actually Manitou Springs, Colorado.
Manitou Springs. Okay, Colorado is beautiful.
Yes.
That'll be nice. So the September, that's going to be September 2020 as well?
Yes, it will be September 2020, and it's looking like Labor Day weekend for now.
Okay, very cool. I'm writing that down. All right. So can you tell us about, let's start with the retreat in March. I know you had told me that it's Madre Terra.
Yes.
Right? And that's in Costa Rica. And so tell us about what it's going to be, how it works, how long is it, what people are going to be doing there.
Yeah, so the retreat is a 5 retreats, 5 days, 5 nights. And it's at this amazing place called Imiloa Institute. And they're basically not just your typical retreat center, because they really thrive on education and community and alternative holistic types of retreats like mine, and not just your typical yoga retreat. And so it's taking place in Dominical in Costa Rica, and it's right by the ocean, beautiful retreat center, where we will be for 5 days. We'll be engaging in the creative process in groups and as well as individually with morning yoga and meditations. But really, Madre Tierra, this retreat in Costa Rica is really centered around the earth and our connection to the earth. We live in a time where, you know, with the social media and especially if you live in a city, you might start to feel disconnected from nature and essentially from your true natural self because of the fact that, you know, with the hustle and bustle of daily life, we sometimes don't even get to touch the earth with our bare feet. Going from our apartments to our cars to our office, and just one basic connection with the earth is that we are lacking in our everyday lives. And so that's really the motivation for Madre Tierra retreats, is to help people reconnect with themselves, with their inner child, their inner creative child through the art process, and as well as connecting with the earth. And the way that we do that is by using materials from the earth, because as we know, like I mentioned in my bio, is that art is our most primitive form of communication.
Yeah.
And if you want to know anything about humans, about history, all you have to do is look at the arts, right? Look at the cave paintings, or, you know, carvings, our dances, our movements, our music, our literature, culinary arts. Everything just really goes back down to the arts. So when I talk about the retreats, I'm always telling people I'm not offering anything that's like out of this world. Actually, I'm offering something that's just basic and that's going back to our roots.
Yeah.
And that's really the motivation with the retreats.
That's a beautiful thing, and I really I admire what you're doing, and I believe in what you're doing for a variety of reasons. But you know, you pointed it out earlier. We're so disconnected from our relationship to nature, just based on how we live as a society, a modern society.
Absolutely.
And so these kinds of opportunities seem very, very special, because we are denied that ability to just be in nature and
exactly
and engage in that way and be playful. And
right.
It's wonderful that you're creating that space for people to be able to do that.
Right. And it really is about offering an opportunity to experience something different, because obviously when they go back home, you know, they're not going to just move to the jungle and, you know, they're going to have to bring these things like I did actually, but they're going to have to bring these things back home with them. And so the idea is that once you've experienced this, you'll be able to implement it into your own life. And even if it's just for half an hour a day, but you'll have felt that connection. And it's something that you'll be able to carry with you in your daily life. And even if it means just going outside and grabbing a leaf and feeling it with your hands and smelling it for a moment and appreciating it and just appreciating its beauty, just that in itself can be extremely beneficial.
Yeah. I know when I moved into the office where I'm at now, I searched for a really, really long time. I had a very difficult time finding a space because I wanted to have that connection with nature. I feel like when I am at work, I might be here for, you know, sometimes I might be here for 10 hours or 12 hours in a day. And the place where I feel my best is outside. I really do cherish the outdoors and that connection with nature. When I do take time off, that's what I want to do. I want to be in nature and engage and go hiking and snorkel and just be in the environment. And so that was a really important decision for me in selecting an office space, was to have that connection. My offices look out over a little lake. There's ducks
Mm-hmm.
out there,
Yeah.
there's turtles, sometimes there's herons, and there's a hawk that's been hanging out lately.
Beautiful. Nice.
And even though I'm not physically there, I can see it through the window and I can admire it and I can be grateful for it. And that helps me to stay motivated to continue to do what I'm doing
Absolutely.
throughout the day.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
and I'd love to also share, because people are thinking probably, what does that look like? So what would one of these directives or activities look like? And one of the ones that I really love, one of my favorite activities to do in nature is the earth mandalas. And so I usually open up and have people find an object in nature, find something, and introduce themselves as that object. And as you start to do that, you start to realize how connected and how similar we are to nature. And so after we've created this mandala together, usually starting from the center and opening out, we'll reflect on it and share. In the beginning, we're saying I am. So let's say you have a piece of rock, a nice smooth rock. You might say I am solid, I am smooth, and I am light if it's a small rock. And then at the end of the directive, people will close by saying I am now. So now that your object, and now that you've put this into the mandala as a group, reflecting on how we move together in our environments and how we influence each other in this environment. So it's a really, really beautiful process, and it's very insightful because I think when you're asked to describe objects in nature by the way they feel, by the way they smell, by how light or how heavy they are, you really, really are engaging with that material, as opposed to, sometimes we go on hikes and we're just like, go, go, go. And you don't even stop to breathe the air and to really feel and be in the space that's around you. So the retreats are really about that, is helping people to get a little bit deeper with Mother Earth.
slow down, reflect,
Slow down.
to really be present in that moment, which is beautiful and healing in so many ways. If we're in the moment and we're present there, then we can't be in the space of like all the stress of whatever's going on in our daily life.
Are you wanting a vacation in paradise? A vacation to rekindle the passion? A vacation without the kids? A vacation where you can learn how to communicate, where you and your partner hear each other and gain insight? Vacation Counseling is your next vacation. Stay in one of our exclusive villas for the ultimate couples retreat. Enjoy dining, boating, and all that South Florida has to offer. Let our counselors guide you through the rest. Vacation Counseling, accepting applications for summer 2020. Visit www.vacationcounseling.com for more information.
And I think too that the earth piece and connecting with the earth and all of the different aspects of nature reminds us that, there's much more to our existence than just us. Like we're not here alone.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes.
And I think in the work that we do, oftentimes we hear from people that that's what they encounter and feel like, that they're just alone in this world, and they're not knowing how to.
Absolutely. And it's funny because to me it's a paradox, because with social media it may seem like we're so much more connected, but in a way we're so much more disconnected from actual physical interactions with one another. And our daily lives are very solitary too. We don't live in tribes or in villages in the ways that we used to. As they say, it takes a village, and now we're expecting everything that used to provide, we're expecting that from one person, from our spouse. And it can become very overwhelming, and it can become very lonely. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because that's another very important aspect of these retreats, is that you're connecting with people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the most incredible thing to see a group of 15 strangers, in the beginning, and then seeing them, the difference on the last day when they leave. And these are these create lifelong relationships. I literally know people from my retreats that are now best friends that did not know each other at all.
That's amazing.
And you're creating unity, and you're creating a tribe, so to speak. And that is really, really beautiful and important. And it's something that, for me personally, I know I cannot live without that, with having, that
Mm-hmm.
sense of community and belonging.
Yeah. No, that is a beautiful thing. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not surprising to hear that people leave and then they have very deep connections afterwards, and those people become very close friends, because you're creating an opportunity for people to really open up and become
Right.
vulnerable. And it's only
Mm-hmm.
when we open up and become vulnerable in connection with somebody else that
Right.
those strong bonds are formed.
Right.
Kind of like the cohort situation in grad
Right.
school, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people end up leaving and
Absolutely.
they're very
Oh
close
yeah.
with those
Oh
people.
yeah. Yes, definitely. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
relate to that.
very cool. And so, what goes into the whole process? I mean, obviously, you could probably talk for hours on the whole process, but just kind of a, a skeletal idea of what goes into how do you come up with a retreat, and how do you come up with, well, what are the activities and interventions that you're going to do? How are you
Right.
going to market this? Who are you marketing it to? Like, how do people even
Right.
find that you existed? I feel really fortunate. I happened to follow you on Instagram, and then last year I met you at the mandala training,
Right.
and I was like, oh my gosh, and I put two and two together that was you, and I was like, I've been
How
stalking
funny.
you.
Yeah.
So I was like,
I
this is
love
so
it.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's so yes, definitely. I could definitely talk for a long time, but I'm going to try to make it as short and concise. But yes, a lot goes into it, and I'm just going to start off off the bat, and say that I did not go to retreat school. I didn't go to business school. I didn't go to marketing school. So everything that I've learned up to today has really just been self-taught and from trial and error. To be
Mm,
honest with you, the first retreat that I did was a little crazy. It was a little crazy. It was in Colombia. I had decided to move to Colombia after getting my master's and working in the field for about a year. I just had this epiphany that I needed to do retreats and go live in the jungle. So that's what I did. And so that's really how it started off. But the inspiration, actually, I should say, started off when I was doing my master's at Pratt Institute. We would go to New Hampshire. We did a spring summer program, and every summer we would spend 3 weeks in this resort or lodge, I guess you could call it.
mhm.
And we would have the first, second, and third years art therapy students, and we would all basically have an intensive 3 weeks of art therapy experientials. Basically, they put us in therapy for 3 weeks. So as you can imagine, this probably could be like a TV reality show
Oh, I'm
with all
sure.
with all of the beautiful things that came out of that. But it was a very intense process. And there was a river there in New Hampshire. The environment was actually a very natural setting.
Mhm.
And so our professors would take us out to the river, and they would take us outside a lot to engage in these type of environmental art therapy or eco art therapy activities. And so that's really when it kind of hit me, when I was
Mm.
like, okay, this all goes together. you know, going back to art being our most primitive form of communication, we've used the earth to create art, to communicate, to express ourselves, to understand ourselves, and to form communities. So so that's really when I realized, like, I want, I call it an adult spiritual summer camp. And so after I had that experience in New Hampshire, I was like, you know what, we need to do this for other people, not just for art therapy students. Other people need to experience this, because I mean, I grew and learned so much about myself in those 3 years in that program. So that was really what inspired me to do the retreats too, was the fact that for 3 weeks every year I was in a sort of art therapy retreats type of thing. So so that's really where it started. And then when I moved to Colombia and I decided to do my first retreat, I really had no idea what I was doing. I could probably still say, like, not that I don't have any idea. Now I have getting better at it for sure, figuring things out little by little. But really, the workshops were workshops that I have done in my own art therapy journey and school. And for example, I took your mandala training. So, you know, based on trainings and directives and experientials that I had done in my own studies, the ones that were the most, I guess the ones that were the most beneficial to me personally, that I resonated with the most, are the ones that I use in my retreats. So the last retreat we did in Colorado was a mandala. Actually, the theme was mandalas.
Okay, beautiful.
So we had a lot of different directives on the mandala. People made personal mandalas. We made a group rotating mandala using paint. Then we went outdoors and we made an earth mandala. So it was really about grounding, meditation, and all of that, and connecting with the earth. And so I'm always just looking for workshops and new directives. And what I do is I in Coconut Grove, I have an I work out of a place called Art Box. Oh. And basically what I do is I roll these workshops out on a weekly basis, and I do them over and over again with groups of people in my community, and you know, to master the workshops. And then I bring them to my retreats. And so that's basically kind of my formula and the way that I explore different things. And of course, I'm always taking other people's workshops and training to continue gaining that experience in different modalities.
So what I really pick out of that is that the work that you're doing on an everyday basis kind of becomes your market research for then how you deliver and structure the interventions in the more intensive retreat formats, which is cool.
Exactly.
So you get really good feedback as you're going along, and then integrate that.
Exactly. Right. And then some people, you know, some of the people that come to the workshops, for example, the Mandala one has been extremely popular. I do altered books workshops. This is an ongoing. I called it the Altered Book Club. So it's every other Monday. That I have actually tonight. I have a clay mantra meditation workshop.
Oh, nice.
Using clay. And so I'm just always exploring all these different types of workshops and then implementing them into the retreats. And so as far as the creation of the retreats, you know, what I'm going off of is the workshop. I always have a yoga teacher that does the guided meditations and yoga in the morning, in the evening, and things like that. And then in terms of marketing, a lot of it is social media, to be honest. Everything is on the internet nowadays, and we're so spoiled with that.
Yeah.
With that way of marketing because it's made everything easier now. And so I will say a lot of my come from social media, Facebook and Instagram marketing. And my flyers, I make them on a website called canva.com. So
I
I
love
my all
Canva.
my flyers, right? You no longer have to be a graphic designer. My website I made myself using WordPress and, Google tutorials. And I do paid ads on Instagram and Facebook. And then a little bit of street marketing. I do print out flyers and, drop them off at different yoga studios and cafes. Hopefully this podcast also might be another way of getting the word out. But yeah,
Absolutely.
just really going out there into the community and trying to challenge the old way of doing therapy. I think that's what it was for me, because when I was doing one-on-one private practice, and then I was also contracting with, all these various different centers, I noticed that I was just burning out. It was just a lot. It was a bit too much for me. And so when I started doing the retreats and the workshops, first of all, I felt more liberated in my work,
Yeah.
a little bit freer. I felt like access and touch more lives that way too, through the workshops and the retreats.
Yeah.
And just me personally, it's not in any way to frown or to, disregard private practice. No, it's
No.
not at all. Each person is going to find their own thing. But for me, I had to really come out of my box and also come out of my expertise, because we really want to be quote unquote, I'm an art therapist, I'm a psychotherapist, but what I noticed was that people are a little bit scared of the word therapy.
Yes.
And as soon as I took the word therapy out, I started getting a lot more people. So I started getting a lot more clients that way. And so I guess I feel like I kind of feel a little bit like, I don't want to say a trickster. People don't know that they're that they're really engaging in therapy. And although the workshops really are more art as therapy as
Right.
opposed to art therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's just been my thing, is just being playful, creative, in my practice and in the way that I deliver my services, and just trying out new things.
Yeah, that's a really, I think that's a theme that comes up in the people that I've been talking to, is a willingness to try something and
Right.
learn from it. And even if it doesn't work out the way you had hoped or envisioned, you take what you learned from that and then apply it into the next variation of what you're going to
Right.
try to do.
Right, exactly. So it's all experimenting and, not being afraid to ask for help. So another thing that I do is I look around me and I look at successful people. And nowadays, again, with Facebook, I'm part of a group. For anyone out there who is interested in doing these retreats, there's a group on Facebook. It's called Creating Transformational Retreats That Sell.
Oh, wow.
And they offer all types of free webinars, free material out there to help you launch your business. And I wish I had heard about that 4 years ago when I started my business, my retreat
Yeah.
business, because I would have definitely gone a lot faster. But I'm in that group now, and you can literally ask a question, and by the end of the day, you'll have 20, 30 responses.
Well,
So it's a very, yes.
we'll put it in the show notes for people.
Yeah. So there's a lot of resources out there, and I would say a lot of podcasts too, on, marketing and all those strategies, which I'm still learning today. Every day I'm learning new words, new methods, and new ways of marketing, and it's actually pretty fascinating. But unfortunately, it's stuff that they don't not always teach you when you do your degree. So you have to kind of go out there and get it for yourself.
I think the only thing that I learned in school about how to market was really how to educate people about what art therapy is and give
Right.
like a free workshop or a free um, uh, lecture on what art therapy is. And that was pretty much it. Other than that, they didn't really talk about the business of
Right.
what a therapist does or can do. I think more the push in grad school is to push us in the direction of working in an agency or a nonprofit
Right.
organization, community mental health,
Right.
and I think for a lot of people they go that route, but like you were saying, day in day out, it's a high demand. It can be very
Yes.
difficult, and it can lead to burnout, and then people leave the field, which is really sad. So,
Yes. Or
um,
they end up in the jungle in Colombia.
right. Oh, that's great because you like put yourself out of it. You reflected, and you're like, okay, I still want to do this, but I need
Right.
to approach it in a different way. And
Exactly.
ideally, that would happen for people. And I'm hoping that's what the podcast can do, is really inspire people to see that there are so many options for
Yes.
how to be creative in the therapeutic work that we do. And it doesn't necessarily have to follow kind of a traditional path.
Traditional. Right. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that's what happened with me. At one point, I was working in hospice per diem. I was working at an eating disorder clinic twice a week, a homeless shelter, a drug addiction rehab center twice a week. And I was working at a public school, one-to-one with a child. And then I had 5 private practice clients. And I was probably spending on average like 20 hours in my car just going from place to place. Uh, so
That's
yeah.
heavy.
Yes. Yeah, and well, I think my case is also particular because my supervisor got pregnant towards the end of our supervision, and she gave me all her private practice clients and all these sites, and I was fresh out of school, and I was like, yes, 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 oh my gosh, I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life. This is amazing. But I was miserable. I was breaking down.
Yeah.
It was just especially as an art therapist fresh out of school going into the field. It was just a lot, and I realized that just wasn't the way that I wanted to work.
Mm-hmm.
And also I just don't do well with institutions. I
Yeah.
like the freedom. There's a lot of things I don't agree with, and I guess you could say I'm a bit of a rebel in that sense. You know,
Me
but
too.
it just there were certain things that I was seeing, especially in hospice and in the public school system, and it would just drive me insane. And so I do still work in schools, but on my terms. I work for a nonprofit called Guitars Over Guns, and we
Mm-hmm.
provide after school art and music mentorship for children.
Beautiful.
So I am still able to get out there and reach the
Mm-hmm.
children without having to abide by the system.
Right. Which it can be, it's hard to sustain in the system. I mean, some people they do
Some
really
people
well,
are for it. Yeah.
and some of us don't. And so I ascribe in the same way, and that the institutional model didn't fit me, and I really
Right.
needed to find another way to continue to do the work. Otherwise, I would have had to leave the field altogether and find
Yeah.
something else to do.
Right.
So it's
Right.
like the private practice entrepreneurial area was either it, or it was leave the field altogether and go in a different
Yep.
direction. But I'm glad I chose the direction I did. because now I get to talk to other people and learn from other people about how they're making a living, doing the work the way they want to do the work, and without having to make those kinds of sacrifices to
Right.
themselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
which is important. So, if you were to speak to a listener who was interested in putting on a retreat, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
what would be a couple of tips that you would suggest for somebody who has the idea, they kind of
Mm-hmm.
have been mulling it over in their mind, but they're not really sure where to start?
So, what I would say is to look around you and see what opportunities are already in around you and in your community. So, a good place to start would be a day retreat, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's a yoga studio in my neighborhood in Coconut Grove, and there's an art studio there. So, for example, I could put on a day retreat and have, one or two workshops prepared where perhaps they're going to go and do a yoga, meditation, create mandalas, share, have lunch together, all the things that you would essentially be doing in a retreat, but doing it in one day.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that I did not do. I know that now, and I'm actually working on doing some day retreats. I kind of jumped
Oh,
a couple steps. I
cool.
just went straight to the retreats. But I am working on doing some day retreats here in Miami. That's what I would suggest for someone that's interested. Another thing I would suggest is to go on a retreat.
Mm.
I know that they're expensive. There's a reason. I now know why they're so expensive. I do the financials and I understand. But
Yeah.
but it is, and I would suggest doing an art retreat if that's
Mm-hmm.
what you're interested in doing. Actually going and seeing how they're run and experiencing it for yourself. And then again, like I said, there's a bunch of resources online. The Creating Transformational Retreats, I would join that group on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook and just see what materials they already have available, because I mean, they're amazing. They will give you from A to Z, like, what you need to do and what are the things that you need to think about. Because some of the biggest mistakes that I made from the beginning was pricing my retreats, pricing them way too low.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and in terms of marketing, making sure that your website looks professional, making sure that you have a call to action on your website, that signing up for the retreat is easy for people, that you're
Mm-hmm.
easy to find. I would also, obviously you probably want to write a business plan, which is another thing that I didn't do in the beginning, but now I have one, and everything is very structured and very organized. But that is what it is. It's structure, organization, it's passion, perseverance, and patience. Those are
Mm.
those are the that's the recipe. Lots
Mm-hmm.
of patience, and if you're passionate about it, you should definitely do it. But be patient. Don't just throw yourself at it. Just, do your research, your due diligence, and it's totally possible.
Yeah, I was talking with somebody else, and she was talking about how she like really likes to give things a full opportunity for her to be able to master it and do her best before she says, okay, that's enough. I'm not going to do it anymore. Versus I build something, not enough people came to it, so I'm just going to give up on
Right.
that and move along to the next
Right.
thing. So utilizing it as an opportunity to learn, how can I reach more people, what can I
Right.
do differently, and then
Right.
continuing that perseverance and the
Yes.
patience piece really is huge. It makes such a difference.
Yes. And if you're not failing, you are not trying hard enough. You are going to fail, and that is okay. Failures are opportunities
They
for
are.
growth. You
Mm-hmm.
know, mistakes are gifts of revelation. You know, these is all part of the process. And I mean, I think the one thing really that stops people is that they're scared that it won't work, or they're scared that they're going to fail. And yeah, you probably will the first time or the second time, but it's not a failure. You know, it's part of the
No.
process. And it's a beautiful process. And once you can become comfortable, once you can get comfortable with that idea, in the sense of, you know what, maybe the first retreat I did, there were like six people maybe, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and they didn't even pay full price. I had to knock the price down in half just to get people to come. I was in Colombia. You know, it's a whole other country.
Yeah.
People don't have as much money as they do here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's just, yeah, it's learning, you know, trial and error. And nowadays you don't have to go the path that I went. You don't have to go the hard path. But I'm kind of, you know, one of those people that needs to learn the hard way sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to do that either. It doesn't have to be grueling, and it doesn't have to be so, you know, so hard. You know what I mean? It does take the perseverance and the patience, but it shouldn't be, you know, a little bit of stress is healthy, but it just shouldn't be so hard. You know what I mean?
Right. It shouldn't be so burdensome.
Right. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think and there's so many resources, as you're pointing out with the group that you're talking about, the transformational retreat group. There's so many resources out there that are available to help people to make things happen that maybe weren't available in previous
Right.
years and times, or weren't as accessible. You know, I'm sure
Right.
that there were probably things that were available for folks, but not as accessible as they are to us
Right.
today. And I really appreciate what you're saying about failure and failing. And there's like a couple of concepts. One is like the idea of failing forward, so that each time you're you know, you have a misstep, but you're moving ahead and you're not
Right.
falling behind, right? You're continuing to go in the right direction. And then the other is the acronym, which I love and I use with my clients all the time, is that FAIL is just an acronym for first attempt in learning. And if
Oh,
we
I like that.
can, yeah, if we can, you know, think about it from that perspective, then it doesn't feel so awful
Right.
when we weren't successful at something the first time. But realistically, like that's how life is. When we first
Yep.
start to talk, we're not successful the first time we open our mouths,
Right.
and we first
Right.
start to walk, we're not successful. It takes a really long
Right.
time to get mobile and to get vocal.
Right. Except that when you're a kid, you're not conditioned yet to
Yeah.
think that failure is such a bad thing. You're gonna talk
Hmm.
your mouth off. You're gonna try to walk every. You know, you're not. You don't even think about failing. You're just
Right.
go, go, go. You know, and so it's. You know, you do have to kind of reprogram and reframe your thoughts sometimes in order to be able to achieve the things that you want to achieve. And it's, you know, it's all about those identifying those limiting beliefs that you have,
Yeah.
and and telling them to go away.
Yes. Yeah, they don't have any room up here. There's
No time, no
no,
time.
no. So I know you had said at first one of the challenges and things where maybe the first time kind of gotcha was figuring out the price point for your retreats. If
Yes.
so in thinking about that, do you have any suggestions on how people could not fall into that mistake? Like, what are some
Yeah.
things that they should do or consider in order to figure out what is the right price point for the services that they're providing and the costs and expenses of what
Sure.
it's going to be for you to even operate it?
Yeah. So the main word is budget. create a budget, and honestly, it's an important, and it's not just create, because I used to create my budgets on a sheet of paper, okay, with a pencil. That's what I thought budgeting was, okay. And then I learned really quickly that there are easier ways and more effective ways of budgeting, like for example using Excel spreadsheets. So I did have to reach out to a friend of mine who does marketing and whatnot, and she put me onto this magical spreadsheet thing, and I started budgeting for real. So when you're budgeting, you definitely obviously want to account for the cost of the lodging and the food at the retreat center. You want to think about your travel expenses, your facilitators. If you have a facilitator, you'd be paying them. Your marketing. How much money do you plan on investing in the marketing? How much do you want to get paid? Is very important. So just a really quick and easy rule of thumb that and I think this would be like, the minimum I would say is $100 a day per guest. So if you have 10 guests for 3 days, then you should be making at least $300 per guest, right? And so I'm just throwing out like a really easy number. But so ideally, you'd have maybe 15 guests, you'd have a 5-day retreat, and you'd be charging, you'd be adding $500 to whatever the cost is with the expenses, right? You can't ever forget your expenses and what you want to make, and then going from there. So let's say you had 15 people that were paying $500, that would be a $7,500 profits from a retreat. And that's on the low spectrum, starting off, I think that's pretty fair to make between 5 and 7,000. And then eventually, when you gain more credibility and you've done them a couple more times, then you can get a little closer, maybe to
Raise
the
your
10,000.
prices.
Yeah. Because it does take a lot of work. And especially if from the get-go you get with, you really learn what you need, it will save you so much time. If you do one of these webinars with one of these companies, that will teach you the basics. And so really, once you have that, you're good to go. That's really putting your idea together and then marketing it, but it's kind of like creating a work of art in a way.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
Definitely is. You're giving birth to a completely new entity outside yourself, and it's kind of evolving and shaping and developing itself too. At the same time. How much time would you say is necessary in terms of all the pre-planning? Because obviously there is a lot of thought that goes into it. There's a lot of research that goes into it. Then there's how do you create all of the things that you need in terms of like administration of the project. How much time would somebody consider giving themselves to go in that portion of things before they actually launched the like, hey, I'm offering this thing?
How much time would they expect to invest in planning for the retreat? That's a very good question. So I would suggest planning in advance. That is the best. And that's I would say that's the max amount of time that you would want to plan it in advance. But just be safe, because you have to remember, if you're going to be looking for facilitators, that might take a little while. Locking down contracts with the actual site, putting down your deposit, creating the retreat, coming up with a marketing plan. All of that can be very time consuming. And so we suggest planning the retreat a year in advance and give yourself 8 to 6 months to market it. So Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
and that's
So it's
really
not,
a good thing to consider, 8 to 6 months of pre-marketing an
yes.
event. That's a significant time commitment. Thanks for sharing that
Right.
piece.
Right. Because people, especially if your retreat is out of the country, if it's an international retreat, people have to get time off of work. They have to buy their plane tickets, they have to plan. And so even if they don't buy, if you don't, get a ticket sale in the first 8 months, you probably won't. People probably usually don't book until 4 months. Some people do book a year in advance if they know you and they know your work. But you people will have to hear about it many times. So I think I heard somewhere that people have to see an advertisement 9 times for them to actually like react or to do something. So the brain kind of works in this way where people are going to see your advertisement for 3 months and they're going to see it once a week. And then after seeing it such a certain amount of times, they might make a move on it and they'll be thinking about it for a year, you
Mm-hmm.
know, or 8 months or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
you want to give people that ample amount of time to like get it into their mind and to start, getting that working.
Right. And start saving, allocating the funds,
Saving
saving the
money.
money for that, because
Right.
it's an investment for
Right.
them too.
Right. And then you want to do early bird. You want to do special discounts and things like that. Nowadays you can do on Instagram, you can have like a promo, where you say, okay, share this with 5 friends, enter to win 20% off your retreat price, and
Ooh,
boom, there you go. You have free marketing. You have people marketing for you for free right there.
that's
Right?
amazing.
It's not necessarily free because you're giving the 20% discount, but you get where I'm going with this.
Yeah, but it's less work for you to have to do, and they're reaching a broader audience that you wouldn't have been able
Right.
to reach otherwise. And honestly, in terms of marketing, I think a social marketing in that way, where somebody is suggesting, "Hey, look at this product. Look at what this is going on," to a group of friends or connections that they have. There's
Right.
definitely more value and trust in that person than a commercial or a print
Absolutely.
ad or something like that. There's a lot more value there. So in terms of your return on investment, it seems like a really solid move too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, and it's really about building your tribe. So, when you do start your marketing, you want to also be careful who you market to because, there's a lot of different types of people out there in the world. So you also want to be careful the way that you market and the way that you word your retreat. So I try to be careful, so people don't think that they're gonna come and I'm gonna heal them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Some people sometimes get the wrong impression, or they think that this retreat is gonna, it's you got to be careful in the wording too, and yes, creating your tribe. So that's also the mailing list. I forgot to mention is
Mm.
starting to put together a mailing list. Um, and then that will happen when you start doing workshops in your community and you start putting your services out there. A podcast is a great idea, a webinar, a newsletter where you offer um, an art directive. You know what I mean? You
Uh-huh.
offer a
Mm-hmm.
directive that people, so you're giving them free material. And by doing that, they're becoming part of your tribe, and they're seeing the value in your
Mm-hmm.
services, and then eventually hopefully signing up to a retreat.
Yeah. I always think about it from the know, like, trust perspective. So before anybody's going to buy from you and buy into the services that you're providing, one, they have to know you and have to be exposed to you, which speaks to what you were talking about of like they need to have interface with your brand 9 times
Right.
before they even like recognize it and who you are. And then they need to like you. They need to have some interaction where they say, okay, yeah, I kind of like this person. They were really nice, or I like the message that they're sending out in the world. And then through that, starting to build trust, and by offering different directives for people to engage in independently, you're building their trust. And like, okay, she's making this suggestion, I'm engaging in it, I found value in it, I can trust her, and the work that she's going to do when I actually invest, this amount of money to go to her retreat.
Exactly.
So a lot of value there. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah, it's all strategy, not working. I'm still learning to work smart as opposed to work hard.
I'm learning that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there anything else that you feel would be valuable for the listeners to hear today that we didn't talk about?
I mean, I would, I think I pretty much said everything that I could say. I would just say go for it. You know what I mean? Think outside the box. If you're an art therapist, if you're an expressive therapist, because we're talking to a broad group here, and so anyone in the expressive, holistic, alternative therapies, think outside the box. Look around you, look at what other people are doing, and put yourself in the process. Be part of it, do it, feel it, know what it is that you're delivering, because that's going to help you be more passionate about it and getting your message across. Practice what you preach, I guess, would be the phrase.
Yeah, I agree. And so if our listeners were interested in learning more about your services that you're providing in the Miami area, but also the various retreats that you're doing in Costa Rica and in Colorado in 2020, where can they find this information out?
Sure. So we actually have, our website is arttherapyretreats.com.
Perfect.
We just launched another website, which will basically have the same services. It's going to be creativeartsretreats.com. creativeartsretreat.com. So you can access the website from any of those two, arttherapyretreats.com or creativeartsretreat.com. And our Instagram is, I have two Instagram. I have one personal for my workshops that I do here in Coconut Grove. And my personal Instagram is miami.art.therapy. So Miami Art Therapy. And the retreat one is creative.arts.retreats.
Okay, awesome.
Yes,
and so we'll put those in our show notes so that people can go to the website and have links to those if they're listening. Sometimes, you can't write everything down. People like to listen on the go.
Right. And we also have Facebook as well.
Okay.
And with the same name.
Creative
Arts Retreats. Yep.
Okay. Awesome. Facebook.
Madre Tierra Creative Arts Retreats.
Awesome. Well, I am so grateful and appreciative of your time today, Ella. Thank you so much for sharing all about this process and the really cool and valuable work that you're doing. And I hope you have great success in 2020. And it's on my goal list to attend
wonderful
one of the retreats.
We'd be delighted to have you.
Yeah, I'd be excited to go. It sounds amazing.
Wonderful.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Creative Psychotherapist. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. For show notes, downloads, and additional resources, head over to the website at www.creativeclinicianscorner.com.